right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us on our first ever Hazards Webinar Wednesday. We are really excited to be launching this series of webinars that will run from now and through the hurricane season. So we're going to be having webinars about every 2 months in June, August, and October, but you're part of the first one, so welcome. My name is Ashley Venice. I am a coastal planning specialist with Texas Sea Grant, and I'm housed within Texas University system. I am part of a community resilience collaborative, a research and extension-based coastal planning program that combines the reach and resources of 2 Texas A&M programs, as you can see by my logo over here. Texas Sea Grant and Texas Target Communities coming together to help communities with some of their planning needs. So my colleagues are also part of this collaborative efforts and are joining us today. We have Walter Peacock, located in Harris County, doing the background magic with all the audio and video checks and making sure everything runs smoothly. And he will be introducing the speakers. We have Kate DeGennaro, who's located in Brownsville, and she will be running the question and answer portion of this webinar. And we have our natural resource specialist, Morgan Ayers, who's going to be doing the background work, monitoring the question and answer chat, which please feel free to use, and taking notes. And so the series was born from a conversation that I've had and all of us have had with multiple people who are buying houses and searching for insurance. It's a really confusing world out there. And with flood and hurricane season upon us, it seemed really important to try and provide as much information about how best to prepare your property and your family for the possibility of a disaster. So we have partnered with a number of state, local, and federal agencies to join us and provide resources and information to the community and hopefully answer some of your most pressing questions. Next week, we will be holding part 2 of this webinar with presenters from FEMA Region 6, Texas General Land Office, and Texas Water Development Board. So please register for that. We will have a link at the end, and we are advertising that everywhere. And hopefully we can answer some more questions for you next week if you don't get them answered this week. So this webinar will be recorded and we will be sending out the link to the email that you used when you registered. So we will have that option for people to share the link far and wide. I believe it will be through YouTube. And without further ado, we are going to start the talk with a Texas State climatologist from the Texas Center for Climate Studies at Texas A&M University in College Station. Dr. Nielsen Gammon is going to talk about local climate information to kind of put this all into context for us and some thoughts about possible future effects in our region.
First up, we have Dr. John Nielsen Gammon. He's the state climatologist and the Regents Professor of Atmospheric Sciences.
Hello, I'm going to talk to you about extreme coastal weather trends, the type of extreme weather that might be expected to occur along the Texas coast, and in particular trends that are apparently or are expected to be caused by climate change. Now, a lot of what I'm going to show you is work that was done as part of a project on looking at extreme weather within the state of Texas over the historical period, as well as the outward to the year 2036. And I had a few students help me out as co-authors. So the first set of slides of information I'll show you are from that. And then the rest of it will be from an expert assessment of changes in hurricane characteristics that was published about a year or 2 ago. Obviously, with climate change, temperatures are changing. Interestingly, they're changing at different rates in different seasons. Over here on the one side, you can see the trend in extreme high temperatures is actually not changing much at all. It's been fairly flat over the past 125 years. But the trend in extreme cold temperatures over on the other side is strongly positive. Cold temperatures are actually increasing over time. So that means that the cold weather we experienced in February, fortunately for us, is probably becoming less common, less frequent overall, although we certainly know that it hasn't stopped completely. Rainfall is also changing across the state of Texas, but not evenly. West Texas, not much of a trend over the past century, but for eastern half of the state and coastal regions, precipitation has increased by about 10 to 18% per century. So that's really a substantial increase in precipitation. If that continues, it would be fairly important for the state of Texas and for such things as freshwater inflows to the Gulf of Mexico. On the other hand, the model projected trends in extreme precipitation are not so wet. In fact, there's a bit of disagreement among climate models, but they tend to be projecting a slight decrease in the amount of precipitation overall in Texas going forward to the next century. So the precipitation forecasts are really sort of up in the air in that regard. When we think of extreme weather, one of the aspects of extreme weather are severe thunderstorms, things like tornadoes, hail, strong winds from thunderstorms. And unfortunately, with climate change, we have very little information on how those sorts of things might be changing. There's some evidence that hail might intensify because of basically larger storms and drier air causing the hail to cool and stay frozen as it falls. But the main thing that jumps out at you from these maps of the observed frequency of tornadoes and hail is that they're centered on populated areas of the state. You can see, for example, in the tornado map, a stretch of high frequency from Dallas-Fort Worth on down past Austin to San Antonio to Corpus Christi. So we see tornadoes because people are there to see them. And since meteorologists and other people have started storm chasing as a hobby, we're seeing more than we used to, but it doesn't actually mean that the numbers have increased. We don't have a real good handle on whether numbers, in fact, ought to increase. Now, the basis for assessing whether storms like this are going to increase or not is actually three sorts of climate information that can be available. One of them is, do we see a trend in the historical data? And unlike the trend for tornadoes, is that trend something that is actually reflecting reality rather than just, say, an artifact of the data? So that's one bit of evidence. A second bit of evidence would be whether a trend is simulated by global climate models. And the third is, do we have a good physical understanding of why there should be a trend in a particular phenomenon? Now, if all of these three things line up, then that means we can have good confidence that there actually is a trend that we need to plan for. If you only got one of these three, then the confidence is going to be pretty darn low. And sometimes these factors can even be contradictory. So what we're going to do is take a look at hurricane projections in the context of these three factors. So we'll look at the historical trend, what climate models are projecting, and what our physical understanding of the climate system tells us about what ought to be happening. And just as an aside, this is how PowerPoint wanted me to stylize this particular slide. Solid trend represented by a bar chart, global climate models represented by a thermometer, and the physical understanding represented by somebody running. I don't know if they're afraid of extreme weather or PowerPoint thinks that we scientists are really physically fit. We go jogging all the time. In any event, let's go on to what we have to say about hurricanes. So first question, will the number of hurricanes change? Will we have more hurricanes in the future, or will we have fewer hurricanes in the future? Well, for observations, there's no globally detected trend in hurricane numbers. Some years are high, some years are low, but on average, you really can't tell that there's a trend. So that doesn't give us much information. Climate models tend to predict fewer hurricanes per degree Celsius of warming by a substantial number, about 6% fewer per degree. And scientists have tried to explain that decrease. They've come up with a couple of explanations, changes in circulation patterns or changes in humidity in the atmosphere, that sort of thing. Bottom line is, expert assessment is, yeah, maybe there'll be fewer hurricanes. Some scientists are fairly confident there will be fewer hurricanes. Others are not so confident. So fewer hurricanes is a distinct possibility. The evidence points in that direction. But until we have a solid theory for it or a detectable trend in the observations, it'll be hard to say for sure. Okay, what about hurricanes getting stronger? Now, here we actually do have an apparent observed trend. Over the past 20 or 30 years, we've clearly seen a greater tendency for Category 4, Category 5 hurricanes, perhaps even the ones that might be called Category 6 if they had such a category. And climate models are consistent with this. They predict an increase of 2 or 3% per degree of warming in maximum storm intensity. And the third line of evidence is physical understanding. Our basic theory of why hurricanes reach the intensity that they do predicts that we should see an increase because of the way the atmospheric structure is changing with global warming. So maximum storm intensity is probably increasing and will probably continue to increase. Now, for risk and insurance purposes, we don't really want to know whether the maximum storm intensity is going to go up. We want to know whether we're more likely to get a strong storm. And here the evidence is a bit more mixed. For example, there's no distinct observed trend in the number of intense hurricanes. The better climate models, the ones that can actually resolve the circulation of a hurricane, do tend to predict a slight increase in the overall number of hurricanes. But in terms of a physical explanation, can't really do it because the change in the number of hurricanes is based upon really two counteracting tendencies. The tendency for there to be fewer hurricanes overall, but the tendency for hurricanes to be more intense once they exist. So probably what this means is beyond some threshold, perhaps a very high threshold, we may actually see an increase in the absolute number of very intense hurricanes, especially the ones that reach super strong intensity, the ones, say, beyond Category 5. But for general tendency, for storms that are Category 3, Category 4, maybe we'll see an increase, maybe not. It's really hard to say at this point. Okay, well, hurricanes bring a lot of hazards with them. One such hazard is the amount of rainfall from hurricanes and the intensity of rainfall. We saw with Hurricane Harvey, rainfall is a big deal for hurricanes, and that's been true through many major hurricanes in Texas, even down to tropical storms in Texas. Tropical Storm Allison, for example, never made it to hurricane status, but it produced flooding that people really weren't able to imagine could happen in Houston. Of course, after Harvey, it's really easy to imagine the sort of flooding that came with Allison. Harvey was really off the charts. Anyhow, we do see that intense precipitation in areas affected by hurricanes is increasing. We also have models, computer models, projecting that the intensity of rain from hurricanes should increase by about 7% per degree of global warming. And we also know why that is. Fundamentally, a warmer atmosphere can hold more water vapor. And so in a hurricane where the column of the atmosphere is completely saturated, you'll be producing more precipitation when your hurricane is warmer. Now, there may also be changes in the structure of hurricanes. The size of hurricanes may change. The location of where precipitation occurs may contract. So those could also affect things, but the dominant factor is the increase in temperature and the amount of water vapor in the atmosphere. So probably the answer is yes, we'll get more intense rain from hurricanes. What about slower hurricanes? Harvey was so devastating, not only because it was producing a lot of rain, but it was moving slowly, so there was a lot of rain in the same place for several days. Now, there's been some studies that have said that there seems to be a decrease in the rate of motion of storms, but computer models don't show any robust tendency there, and there's no real sound physical basis to expect them to slow down in general. In fact, a recent study by someone at Rice University suggests that, at least in the Texas area, hurricanes will probably actually speed up. They'll tend to move faster rather than stalling. So probably we will not see slower hurricanes, at least in Texas. And last factor I want to mention, greater storm surges. Well, that's a combination of many factors. So for example, we've got sea level rise and coastal subsidence going on. So that means that with average water levels higher, the storm surge will be on top of that higher also. Also, we have something called compound flooding. We get more rain, that means there's more water flowing into the ocean along the coast at the same time the surge is happening. So that can contribute to higher water levels overall. In terms of the hurricanes themselves, it's sort of a mixed bag. Stronger hurricanes would mean a bigger storm surge, but it's not clear that we'll have more stronger hurricanes overall. And by the way, coastal vulnerability depends not just on the height of the seawater, but also on the barrier islands and the various coastal protections that are in place. This is a figure that was produced by the Bureau of Economic Geology at the University of Texas, showing trends in the location of the coastline. And 80% of the Texas coastline has actually retreated over the past 80 years or so, at a typical rate of about a meter per year. So that's a significant retreat in many parts of the coastline. So that means that places along the coast are actually literally closer to the ocean than they used to be 50 years ago or 100 years ago for the most part. So here's my bottom line summary. Hurricanes are complicated. Some aspects of them are clearly getting worse because of climate change. Some not so much. Some, such as total number, is probably getting better. That's because different aspects of hurricanes change in different ways. But the things that seem to be the most solid in terms of trends is that the flood risk and storm surge risk are both increasing. So that's it for my presentation today. I'll be happy to answer questions, or you can follow up with me. I've got my email address right here, so you can take a look at it, and it's easy enough to memorize, I think. Certainly easier than spelling my name. So thank you very much.
Next up is Manuel Variel. He is the TWIA Ombudsman and Customer Operations for the COAST program. Without further ado, here's his presentation.
Good afternoon. My name is Manuel Villarreal with the Texas Department of Insurance, Texas Windstorm Insurance Association Ombudsman, and COAST Program Coordinator. Welcome to today's Hazards Webinar Wednesday. What Texans need to know about your basic insurance policy. With today's webinar, we trust this information will help in making the best decision for you and your family. The Coastal Outreach and Assistance Service Team, COAST, provides information and educational programs to help TWIA policyholders and coastal consumers. Hurricane season is fast approaching, which begins June the 1st, but 2020 was a historic season with record-breaking storms. 30 named storms, and 12 making landfall in the U.S. Texas is the second most dangerous state for wildfires. Tornadoes. Texas averages 132 tornadoes a year. The majority of those tornadoes happen in the months of April, May, and June. Again, we've got major hailstorms in Texas. Record-setting cold, snow, and ice that paralyzed South Texas. Let's not forget oil refinery explosions. A fire that burned over 4 days at a petrochemical plant in suburban Houston. Schools, businesses closed in LaPorte and Deer Park. This is why it's important to be prepared, to have the right type of insurance. The type of insurance you need depends on what you want to insure and where you live. Review your coverages regularly. Make sure your insurance policies are up to date and provide enough coverage. Gather information and document. Make a list of items you own and update it at least once a year. Take a video or pictures of your home and contents. Policies may vary. Companies must write Texas homeowners insurance on policy forms approved by TDI. Before 2003, companies had to use Texas promulgated forms or ISO forms. Insurers began filing and using their own forms in 2003 under Senate Bill 14. Products will now vary, such as policy language, discounts, deductibles, exclusions, special limits, and conditions. Companies may exclude wind, hurricane, and hail, and consumers may have to seek coverage with Texas Windstorm Insurance Association. The exclusion to wind applies to the 14 coastal counties, from East Texas, Jefferson County, down to Cameron County. This includes 5 cities east of 146 in Harris County: Pasadena, Morgan's Point, Shore Acres, Seabrook, and LaPorte. We also have the Texas Fair Plan Association. TFPA was established by the Texas legislature to provide essential property insurance for eligible Texas policyholders when no one else will. The Texas legislature provided the statutory authority for the creation of the Texas Fair Plan Association in 1995. That statute was enacted in 2002, and TFPA was created. There are 6 major components under a homeowner's policy in the course of you shopping for insurance. I'll begin with a dwelling. Pays for your house if it's damaged or destroyed by a covered peril. Coverage is issued for replacement costs or actual cash value. Find out what it costs to rebuild your home. This is not the same as real estate or market value. Other structures, which pays to repair, rebuild structures not attached to the house, such as a detached garage, storage sheds, and fences, including the she shed. This amount is typically 10% of the dwelling value, and additional coverage may be requested. Personal property pays for the items in your house, such as furniture, clothing, and appliances that are damaged, stolen, or destroyed. Increased value may be necessary for jewelry, watches, and furs due to theft, specifically insuring collectibles such as baseball cards, figurines, Star Wars collectibles that will require an appraisal. Loss of use pays for the additional living expense, such as housing, food, and other essential expenses, if you have to temporarily move because of damage to your home due to covered perils. Your policy will pay either a percentage of the amount of your dwelling coverage, typically 10 to 20%, or for a specific period after the loss, such as 24 months. Personal liability pays to defend you in court against lawsuits and provides coverage if you are found legally responsible for someone else's injury or property damage. This amount ranges from $50,000, $100,000, $300,000, and higher. Medical payments pays for the medical bills of people hurt on your property. It might also pay for some injuries that happen away from your home. This amount is from $1,000 to $5,000. This is the most important segment of my presentation regarding new rules. Senate Bill 417 in 2017 required insurers to provide a notice to agents and policyholders when they make a material change to a policy on renewal. It applies to personal auto and residential property policies and commercial policies. Under these particular rules, it allows insurers to provide a notice of material change instead of canceling or non-renewing policies when the insurer makes a change to a prior or existing policy that will reduce coverage, change conditions of coverage, or change the duty of the insured at renewal time. This is why it's important to review your policy annually. These changes, generally, a notice of material change must appear in a conspicuous place where it's noticeable. Clearly indicate each material change to the policy, be written in plain language, and be provided to the insured not later than 30 days before the renewal or expiration date. Ladies and gentlemen, it is critical and important at renewal time to please review your policies annually. This is the end of my presentation, and look forward to any questions you may have at the end of this seminar. Thank you.
Next up is Douglas Goldenstein. He's a certified coastal construction inspector and works for TDI. He performs oversight inspection for the windstorm protection program.
Hello, my name is Doug Klopfenstein. I work for the Texas Department of Insurance Windstorm Office in Corpus Christi, Texas. I serve the department by performing educational services and oversight inspections along the Texas Gulf Coast. This afternoon, I prepared a PowerPoint slideshow. I will try to have this loaded here for you so you can see information about our program. So to start, the Texas Department of Insurance Windstorm Office has 4 field offices up and down the Gulf Coast, and I work in Corpus Christi, Texas. And just to give you a little bit of background about our program, certain structures that are located along the Texas Gulf Coast and they have insurance coverage through the Texas Windstorm Insurance Association, or what is commonly called TWIA. Anytime that they do any type of construction or alterations to their structure and the work starts on or after January 1st, 1988, has to be inspected and certified to be able to maintain their coverage through TWIA. And often we hear where people do not get the certification, and we hear the terminology that they're non-renewed or canceled. So they want to make sure that whatever they do, even building a new structure or any types of repairs, they have them certified through the department to be able to maintain their coverage. In 1987, the state legislature enacted a bill that required the windstorm inspections program to begin. The program started January 1st, 1988 through the Texas Department of Insurance. And the Texas Department of Insurance not only provides inspection services, which currently are free, but they also provide the certificate of compliance, which now can be downloaded on the TDI website. We will talk about that a little bit later on. The jurisdiction we have are the 14 counties called the designated catastrophe area. This is along the Texas Gulf Coast, ranging from Jefferson County, where Beaumont, Texas is at, all the way down to Cameron County, where Brownsville, Texas is at. And then, of course, all the counties in between. There is an area in Harris County, east of Highway 146. This will give you a little bit more idea. It's taken in this area. Any one of those 5 cities that are on the east side of Highway 146 are also considered in the designated catastrophe area. So any structure that is altered, repaired, and added to, or maybe even a new structure built on property may have to have the windstorm certification. So if you have any questions, you want to make sure you contact our department to provide that information for you. The yellow card that's on here, we hand those out. We call it our before you build card. Most people know it as our yellow card, but on this card it tells you that new structures, additions, repairs, alterations to an existing structure, even re-roofs or sometimes mechanical equipment would have to be certified to be able to maintain coverage through TWIA. And then our phone number is about a little bit over halfway down on the card, just below the map. And if you need to contact TWIA, their number is towards the bottom of the card. Also, items such as exterior wall coverings, roof coverings, components of a roof such as like roof vents and turbines, skylights, windows and doors, garage doors, shutter systems, the components that fit over the top of a window or a glazed door could need to be certified. Mechanical equipment, which is not limited to air conditioning units, but now also includes solar panels that are being attached to structures. So a lot of these components often require certification. Now, TDI does have a list of 21 items that do not require to be certified. These items are commonly known as repairs. Now, if there are structural changes made to a structure, such as maybe they have rotten studs or rotten rafters, or they want to change a roof pitch or things like that, that would not be considered as a repair. So those items would all have to be certified. Even when they get into re-roofing, they replace a piece of plywood on the deck, that would have to be certified along with the rest of the roof. So they want to make sure that if you have any questions on it, our number is on this flyer, which is 1-800-248-6032. That number is toward the bottom, but you want to make sure you contact us. And although that these items do not require certification to maintain coverage through TWIA, one can call TDI and request an inspection to be made on certain things. Recently, TDI adopted the international codes, the 2018 International Residential Code and the 2018 International Building Code. This became effective September the 1st, 2020. Now, when the department adopted the codes, they adopted the codes without what they call Texas revisions. And in some of the revisions we previously made, we had wind speed maps. We no longer have those wind speed maps. We used to talk about wind zones such as Inland 2, Inland 1, and Seaward. Those now are legacy areas or zones. And the new wind speed map that actually comes out of the 2018 International Residential Code, or IRC, looks similar to this. And so when one is trying to find out which wind speed they're in, they would have to go to this map to be able to determine that. Also, in the 2018 codes, wind design is now required in certain locations. And on this map, it'll show you that the darkened areas or the darker shaded areas require wind design. And if you look real close, you'll notice that almost everything, if not everything, in Nueces County or San Patricio County require wind design. So if you have any questions, contact your inspector or contact TDI and we'll provide you guidance and direction on that. Now, what this means to us is when you look into the code a little bit farther, there's a section that says where regions where there's wind design that's required in accordance to the figure that I just showed you, you just can't use the International Residential Code to build to. You have to choose one of these 5 documents. The first one is the Wood Frame Construction Manual, then the ICC 600, ASC 7, which is an engineered document on how to build certain structures. There's a standard on cold form steel, so if you have a metal structure, you can follow that, or what they call the International Building Code, and right now that would be the 2018. So you'd have to build to one of those other 5 standards than the International Residential Code. Also, TDI provides evaluation services. So if you are looking up information to determine how do I put siding on or which products I need to choose from to be able to put on there, like certain windows or certain doors, you can go to the TDI website. I have it listed there at the bottom of the screen towards the left-hand side underneath the picture. And if you go to this page and click on product evaluations, a page that the next page will come up looking like this. It'll give you a list of products that you can choose from. And once you click on the product that you're interested in, you can look for certain manufacturers, certain product names, and choose from that. If you want a quick reference link that you can go to, I provided this in the slideshow, and so this link will take you directly to the page that is to the left. So all you'd have to do is click on it, and you'd be able to find certain product listings. The product listings we have currently look like this. These are what we call the TDI product evaluations. And in the TDI product evaluations, there's certain applications. It has the manufacturer's information in there, the product information, the type of fasteners that have to be used, the space in the fasteners that have to be used to be able to make sure the product is installed correctly. And then an inspector hired by TDI or appointed qualified inspector can approve products listed on TDI website. Now, once a project is going to be worked on, the customer wants to make sure they contact TDI, and a WPI-1 needs to be filled out. Something that the department does is we provide information to the cities when asked. So if a customer says, listen, I want to replace siding on my house, they'll call us up. We will fill out the WPI-1, and we will give them what they call the application ID number. On new construction and room additions, even air conditioner units, they have to be inspected and certified by a Texas licensed professional engineer or an appointed qualified inspector. So you'd have to contact one of them to fill this out. But if someone is going to do repairs or minor replacement of items such as windows and doors, they can contact us and we'd be more than happy to fill that out for them. Once the item has been inspected and deemed approvable, the department provides a WPI-8. And this is what the customer gives to their insurance agent to give to TWIA to be able to have their home insured through TWIA. Now, one question we get is, okay, I've got a roof that was done back in 1995 and I had it replaced in 2010. Do I need another WPI? Absolutely. So anytime that somebody does something to replace an item that they had previously worked on, they have to get a new WPI-8 for the new work. And of course, every time you have like a new structure and then you do other repairs to it or alterations, you keep on accumulating WPI-8s for that particular address. If you have any questions about this presentation or about the Windstorm Inspections Program, you can contact me. My name is Doug Kloppenstein. My phone number is 1-800-248-6032. If you choose option 6, my extension is 39203. And my email address is there also. That email address is probably the easiest way to contact me. Also, if you have any other questions about the program or general questions, you can contact TDI Engineering, the same phone number, 1-800-248-6032, and choose option 5, and they'll be more than happy to help you.
Thank you, Douglas. Next up, we have Kimberly Donovan with she's the Chief Policy Analyst for the Office of Public Insurance Counsel.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kim Donovan, and I'm the Chief Policy Analyst with the Office of Public Insurance Counsel. I'm excited to be part of this workshop and appreciate everyone taking the time to attend. I'm going to talk about tips for shopping for residential property insurance, provide some resources including who OPIC is, what we do, and how to contact us. Let's start our discussion by talking about some general important tips to keep in the top of your mind when shopping for insurance. These general tips, which we will discuss in more detail, are: determine your needs, don't shop on price alone, ask questions, and research. You may be familiar with the 4 C's when shopping for diamonds, so we at OPIC created the 3 C's of insurance to try to help you remember three key things when shopping. The 3 C's are cost, coverage, and customize. The first C of insurance is cost. For most things we buy, we have something tangible to show for it. For example, if I buy a car, I'm getting to drive and actually use it. Even for purchases like a gym membership, I know that if I purchased an 8 times a month, no weekends package, that I can go to the gym 8 times a month, but only during the weekdays. With insurance, you're paying for a complicated promise that if certain things happen, the company will help you pay for the damages. This complicated promise, combined with the advertising focus on how much money you can save by switching and bundling multiple policies, it isn't surprising that most people seem to shop on price alone by just looking for the lowest payment. Another thing with homeowners insurance is many people pay for their insurance as part of the mortgage. So sometimes people don't really think about it too much or just don't want to fool with switching it. As Mr. Villarreal said, it's extremely important to pay attention to things sent by your insurance company, as companies are allowed to renew your policy, but make changes if they send you a notice notifying you of these material changes. So it is possible that your company is making changes to your renewal policy in an effort to not increase what you pay so much, but those changes might matter to you. Shopping around can save money, and many companies do also provide discounts if you bundle auto and homeowners. Just don't shop on price alone. Be aware and compare what you are being offered. What you can pay can differ greatly from company to company, but policies are not the same. And this brings me to OPIC's second C of insurance, coverage. While homeowners policies can differ greatly, there's some common basic components. As you heard from Mr. Villarreal, those components are dwelling and other structures, personal property, often called contents, loss of use, personal liability, and medical payments. Condos has the same basic components with a key difference. The structure being covered on the condo unit owner's policy is the unit only and usually the studs in, because the condo master policy for the whole condo association covers the roof and other commonly owned structures. For renter's insurance, a key difference is that the renter doesn't own the property, so renter's insurance is not insuring the structure itself. One important thing to note is that coverage for flood, earthquake, and landslides is typically not included in any of these policies. In Texas, we have a lot of severe weather events, and if it rains, it can flood quickly. If you want coverage for these perils, you typically have to buy a separate policy or endorsement. When determining your needs, it's important to look at what you currently have. If you're coming up for renewal, I cannot stress enough to look to see what coverages, if any, are being made to not only the price you pay, but the coverage you will receive. It's also important to see if your needs have changed. Did you build a swimming pool? Get a pet or trampoline? Buy expensive jewelry, art, electronics? Are you now running a business or working from the house? Have construction costs gone up? Is the amount of insurance to replace or build your home enough? Have you done any renovations to your house? Have there been updated building code or ordinances that you would have to meet in the event you had to repair or rebuild your home? Are there any discounts or possible things you can do to qualify you for discounts that you aren't currently receiving? These are the sort of things that are covered under our 20 questions to ask when shopping for insurance resource, which is on our website and also included later in this presentation. It's a good idea to do an inventory, take videos, record of what you have, as things add up fast. If you have ever moved, think about how much stuff you didn't realize you had until then. I will talk more about making sure your insurance meets your needs in a moment. You heard from Mr. Villarreal that Texas used to have standard policies companies had to use, but that is no longer the case, which brings me to OPIC's third C of insurance, customize. This is great on one hand because companies can provide more options to better meet consumers' needs. But on the other hand, it's hard to know what you're getting and to compare policies. Often it isn't apples to apples, and the information is not easy to understand. As you will shop, you will likely hear the terms all risk, which is also called open perils, and name peril policies. All risk policies typically are considered broader coverage as they cover all risk not specifically excluded in the policy, as compared to policies that only cover perils named in the policy. But it really comes down to what the policy contract language says, and there can be all risk policies that provide limited coverage. So again, be aware, compare, and ask questions. Another thing aside from what is called the base policy contract is endorsements. Company offer different optional endorsements to allow you to customize to get more or less coverage. A common example of a coverage you have to add is backup of overflow of a sewer or drain. If you choose not to have this coverage, then for example, damages from your toilet overflowing because a sewer line backed up would not be paid. gross, and I will leave it at that. If you decide to save money by choosing less coverage or a higher deductible, make sure you understand how this will affect you if you have a claim. Now, about deductibles, a deductible is that part of the loss which you are responsible for before your insurance coverage kicks in. This means that if you have a higher deductible, you have to pay more money before you're able to get an insurance payment. And if your damage costs the same amount or less than your deductible, your company won't pay. Your monthly premiums will typically be less with a higher deductible, but you have to decide how much money you can handle on your own if you have a loss. So what are the common types of deductibles that you have on your current insurance or that you will see as you shop for insurance? Flat amount deductible. This is a fixed dollar amount. So for example, $1,000. Percentage deductibles. Percentage deductibles are based on a percentage of your home's insured value, the dwelling coverage amount, often called coverage A. For renters, it is based on your contents coverage amount. It's important to note that the percentage is calculated on the coverage amount of your home, or for renters, your contents, and not the amount of your claim. Other types of common deductibles found in residential property policies are hurricane, named storm, and wind hail deductibles. These special types of deductibles are usually percentage deductibles. A hurricane deductible typically applies to damage from storms categorized as hurricanes by the National Hurricane Center, National Weather Service. A named storm is typically triggered when the National Weather Service officially names a storm. So this is broader than a hurricane deductible. For example, also includes a tropical storm. Wind hail deductible is the broadest of the three and typically applies to any kind of damage from a wind or hail event. The specifics can differ, so you need to look at your existing policy and make sure that you ask questions as you are determining your needs and shopping for insurance. It is important to not only ask questions, not just on what type of deductible, but understand how they apply. Most deductibles apply on a per claim basis, but it is possible, for example, that a named storm deductible may only apply once a season rather than each storm. Now that we have talked about the common types of deductibles, let's take a look at how different percentages impact the amount you will pay out of pocket on a claim. Let's say that your home is insured for $200,000 and you have replacement cost coverage. There is a hailstorm. I know that's hard for us Texans to imagine, and the hail causes $7,000 worth of damage to your home. If you have a $1,000 deductible, you pay $2,000 of the claim and the company pays $5,000. With a 3% deductible, you pay $6,000 of the claim and the company pays $1,000. And if you have a 5% wind hail deductible, your deductible is $10,000. So that means that the $7,000 damage is below your deductible and the company pays nothing and you're responsible for the entire $7,000. These examples show the importance of making sure as you are figuring out how much you will save with lower deductibles that you balance that cost savings on your premiums with the amount that you will be responsible for in the event that you have a claim. Importance of deductibles is one major consideration. Another one is how a loss is settled, often referred to as loss settlement. Usually the options are actual cash value, referred to as ACV, or replacement costs, referred to as RC or sometimes RCV. So after your deductible, how much you get from the insurance company also depends on if the coverages you purchased pay actual cash value or replacement cost. Actual cash value is the amount to replace or fix your home and personal items minus depreciation. And depreciation is basically a decrease in value based on things like age or wear and tear. A replacement cost is the amount to replace or fix your home. It's important to note that even with replacement cost coverage, some things like fences, appliances, and roofs may still be paid at actual cash value. Ask questions and read your policy carefully. We've talked about how important it is to determine your needs and to not shop based on price alone. Deductibles and the difference in actual cash value versus replacement cost are just two examples of decisions that could make thousands of dollars of difference in the claim payment you receive. I cannot stress enough how important it is that you read your existing policy, look at any renewal policy information offered, and as you get quotes for insurance, that you do the math to make sure you balance how much something will cost or save you in your insurance payment with what coverage you are giving or how much you will be paying out of pocket for the deductible if you have a loss. At this point, I know you have received a lot of information, and on top of that, insurance is complex, so you're probably thinking, how am I going to do this? By researching and asking questions. Insurance isn't easy, and what is best for you may not be best for someone else. The web is a good source of information to look for agents and companies and read reviews. There are many options to choose from and many underwriting companies that you may not have heard from or heard of. To get you thinking about what questions to ask, we created 20 questions to ask when shopping for many types of insurance. When you see here is the residential property, renters, and flood ones as an example. As you're shopping for insurance, part of the research piece is to make sure that the information you are providing and receiving is accurate. This information is being used to determine what insurance to offer you and how much you pay. Take a look at your current policy and declarations page. Is the information accurate in meeting your needs? Is your policy coming up for renewal and you received your information from your company? Also look at that information to see what is being offered. Does this meet your needs? And how is it different from what you have already? When obtaining quotes for insurance, make sure that the information is accurate. Not only should you verify the insured information, home address, age, and what the construction material is, are the types and amount of insurance coverages, limits, and deductibles as requested. These are a few of the typical questions that will be asked of you, but there are many questions that can vary by company. Bottom line, make sure the information is correct. You can make a mistake, and the agent or company representative you're speaking with can make a mistake. Especially for those of you that like to shop online, often at least a portion of the application information is pulled in from databases. While this will help you not having to enter as much information, it could be wrong, so it is important to check any auto-filled text. Not checking the accuracy of all information could result in not getting offered a policy, having to pay more, a loss of coverage, or unexpected out-of-pocket expenses in the event of a claim. There are many resources out there and just too many to list. I mentioned a moment ago about searching online that the web is a good source of information. I want to point out a few more. One of our key things here at OPIC is developing resources and tools to help insurance consumers make informed decisions. I will close in just a moment talking about who we are and what we do for those of you that are not familiar with our agency. Our website has, for example, residential property broken down by the basics, shopping guide, and questions to ask. Our policy comparison tool allows you to compare coverage for up to 5 policies at a time. It will allow you to compare if the policy is an all risk or named perils policy, the perils that are covered, and if actual cash value or replacement cost. Remember, this is a starting point and not a replacement for more in-depth questions to an agent or company or research. If a specific coverage is important to you, ask the agent or company about that coverage directly. Help Insure is a website that's provided by both TDI and OPIC to compare sample prices, find discounts, get complaint info, and see rankings of many companies in Texas. The 25 largest nationwide writers have to provide information, but there are also others that have provided their information as well. TDI you heard from, and I know they provided resources as well. I provided a link directly to their home insurance guide page. For TWIA, if you live in a coastal county and aren't able to find wind and hail coverage, the Texas Fair Plan Association, if you cannot find a company that will insure your home, and FEMA's National Flood Insurance Program for resources and how to get flood insurance. I want to close our discussion today by briefly talking about who OPIC is, what we do, and how to find us in case anyone is not aware. We are a state agency that works to make the Texas insurance market transparent, efficient, and responsive to its customers, and we do this primarily in 3 ways. Regulatory. We review and analyze the residential property and personal auto rate and form filings filed with the Texas Department of Insurance, raising concerns to get things changed as appropriate. Legislative. We work with the Texas legislature and other interested stakeholders to advance the interest of Texas insurance consumers by serving as a resource for proposed legislation and legislative hearings. And last but certainly not least, outreach and customer education. We provide information to consumers to help them make informed decisions about their insurance. We do events like this, have online shopping guides, tips and articles, and many other resources. We also help consumers with insurance questions. We can't represent individual consumers or provide legal advice, but we can answer questions and provide resources and suggestions for consideration. You can contact us by phone at 877-611-6742 or email at help@opic.texas.gov. Please visit our website, www.opic.texas.gov, for more information, including the resources I mentioned, and follow us on Facebook and Twitter at TXOPIC for bite-sized insurance information and tips. Thank you, and I look forward to addressing any questions during our Q&A session.
Thank you, Kimberly. And next up, we have David Lawson.
Hello, my name is David Lawson, and I'm with the Texas Windstorm Insurance Association. We wanted to take a little bit of time today to discuss with you who we are and why we exist, who's eligible for Texas windstorm policies, how to maintain your policy, and then discuss the claims process. So, what is TWIA and why does it exist? TWIA is a not-for-profit insurance organization that was created by the Texas legislature in 1971. We provide access to wind and hail insurance that is not provided by ordinary insurance companies on the coast. So, TWIA provides wind and hail insurance that acts as a companion policy to a normal homeowner's policy. We provide coverage for only two things: windstorm and hail. In many ways, Texas Windstorm is like a regular insurance company in that we issue policies and pay claims. We're also regulated by the Texas Department of Insurance. We have nearly 200,000 policies in force throughout the 14 coastal counties. And throughout the area, we have $55 billion in insured value. TWIA is also regulated by a board of directors, which is a 9-member board appointed by the Commissioner of Insurance. There are 3 representatives that represent the coastal area of Texas. There are 3 from the inland portions of the state, and then 3 members that represent the insurance industry. Now, let's talk about who our policyholders are. The properties must be located in the area designated by the Commissioner of Insurance. These are the 14 coastal counties of Texas and a small portion of Harris County east of Highway 146. As a residual market insurer, property owners must have received one declination from another carrier before being eligible for Texas Windstorm. While properties must be in insurable condition as specified in our plan of operation, they must also get a certificate of compliance, also known as a windstorm certificate or a WPI-8. Along with that, properties located in a V flood zone must have flood insurance as a companion policy. Every year, it's important for our policyholders to review their policy with their agent. When they do this, they should review the declarations page. This is where you'll find information about your deductible and what endorsements you have as additional coverages to your policy. All of this can make sure that you're prepared in the event of a loss. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the claims process and what you can do as a policyholder to prepare. Before ever having to file a claim, there are a few things that you can do to put yourself in a good position. The first is to build a relationship with a contractor before the storm. After a large storm, there will likely be an influx of out-of-state and out-of-area contractors who are unfamiliar with the code compliance needs of people on the coast. Talk to your neighbors, family, and ensure the contractor that you identify understands your needs. The next thing to do is to get to know your building a little bit better. On a yearly basis, if possible, do an inspection yourself and document areas of concern, as well as going throughout the inside of your property and documenting your personal property. The other piece is to get to know and understand the materials with which your home is built. This can set expectations for yourself on the back end of a claim when an estimate is presented to you. Another thing that you can do to prepare yourself is to create a go kit. If you ever have to evacuate, or if your area's infrastructure has been damaged by the storm where there's no cell phone coverage or internet, having hard copies of your policy documents can be a lifesaver. It can set expectations and get you information that's critical right after the storm. And a companion to that is to build a relationship with your agent. Along the Texas coast, many homeowners have 3 separate policies: a standard homeowners insurance policy, a flood insurance policy, and a wind and hail insurance policy. Going through all 3 different policies and understanding how the coverage impacts different types of damage is very important in setting expectations for yourself and understanding what may have to happen if you need to file a claim. Another important topic to cover with your agent is to ensure that you understand the difference between actual cash value and replacement cost value. Most home insurance policies pay to repair or rebuild your home based on current costs. This is called replacement cost coverage. But some policies pay less based on the age and the condition of your home. This is called actual cash value. It's important to note, all TWIA policies start as an actual cash value policy. But for an additional premium, you can add an endorsement that provides you with replacement cost coverage. Actual cash value policies cost less in premium, but they also pay less after a claim. Let me give you a brief example. If the cost to repair your roof is $20,000 and your roof is a 5-year-old, 20-year shingle, it's likely that around $5,000 would be deducted from the claim. If you add in the deduction for your deductible, it's likely that you could look at $7,000 to $8,000 being subtracted from the total amount of the cost to repair the damage. This is why it's so important to understand your policy. There are multiple endorsements outside of the replacement cost coverage endorsement that can add additional coverages beyond the base policy language. For instance, if you've been displaced because of the damages to your home, some of those costs may be covered through an additional living expense endorsement that's available for an additional premium. All in all, understanding your policy and working with your agent can help prevent surprises. And the last piece of advice for preparing for a claim is to make sure that your contact information is up to date with us, your cell phone information, and your email address. The faster that we can make contact with you, the faster we can begin to evaluate your claim. Another part of setting expectations and preparing for a claim is to understand the TWIA claims process. First, it's important to note, you will not be penalized for filing a claim. We encourage you, if you identify or believe that there may be damage from a covered peril, please report the claim as soon as possible. Once you determine that you need to file a claim, the fastest and most efficient way is to register for our online claim center. If you visit twia.org/claim center, you will be able to access, file, and manage all of your claims throughout the process. When you file a claim through the online claim center, it's important to provide as much information as possible about the damage. You can also upload any images or documents that may be pertinent to the claim. Along with that, you can file your claim simply by calling our 24/7 call center, or you can call your agent and ask that they submit your claim for you. After you've filed a claim, you will be contacted by one of our independent adjusters to set up a time for inspection. At inspection, they will go throughout the entire property and document all of the damages. If there's anything in particular that you're concerned with, make sure to point out to them at the time of the inspection. Once they finish the inspection, they will send their report complete with photos, a narrative, and any applicable estimates to the claim examiner inside of our offices. It's important to note, the independent adjuster who does the inspection at your home does not have the ability to provide any coverage information or determine if any of the damages might be covered under your policy. The claim examiner will be able to review the policy coverages against the damages that were found at the inspection. We want to get it right the first time, but in some instances, it's not going to be apparent from the initial inspection what caused the damage. In those instances, we will send out an engineer certified by the state of Texas if this happens to determine the cause and origin of that damage. If there's questions about the price or the scope of the damage and the estimates that we provide, we'll send out a building consultant to further provide information that may help us determining those things. And finally, the estimate that you receive might not reflect the actual cost to do the repairs. If you review estimates from contractors that differ from ours, we encourage you to submit those to us so that we can review and determine what those differences might be and if an additional payment is necessary. Thank you for listening to the presentation. If you have any questions or want additional information, you can visit twia.org or ask us questions during the Q&A section of this event after the presentations.
All right. Thank you so much to our presenters for sharing that information. I'm going to pass it over to Kate to start the Q&A.
Howdy, everyone. I'm Kate. I am also a planning specialist with Texas Sea Grant. I will be taking over for the Q&A period. First, I would like to give a virtual round of applause to Walter, who has been our wizard behind the curtain for the videos and such. So thank you very much, Walter. And then I'll ask panelists, please turn on your videos so we can go into gallery mode for the attendees. Thank you. So just some housekeeping tips for the Q&A period. We have disabled the chat for all the attendees. So people have been using the Q&A box. That's great. Everyone, there's three, at least I see three different tabs. There's a tab for open questions. There's a tab for answered questions. So if you want to read the answers to other people's questions, you can follow along in the chat. I will be readdressing some of the questions just to make sure that everyone feels like they understand what the answer is. But we also want to be really respectful of everybody's time. And so if there is a question that's a little bit complicated, we may just follow up with that person after the webinar through phone or through email. And if we really run out of time and we don't get to answer your question at all, then we will also follow up after the webinar with an email or phone call. I think that's it. So I'm going to check and see if there's any questions in the chat box that haven't been answered yet. We have one open question that says, how long are TWIA adjusters trained, and do they have to be certified to assess the damages? Is there a particular?
I can go ahead and take that.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Yes, TWIA adjusters are trained by us. They go through a training program and they are certified by us, but it's not like a state certification. So Manny, if you want to add
Yeah.
about their certifications through TDI, that may
Yeah.
be your piece.
They have to be certified through the state of Texas, and they're given a test, and they become licensed adjusters. What happens thereafter is just the experience of the adjuster when they're doing claims. Correct, they have to be certified in the state of Texas to adjust claims.
Correct. And like I said, they do go through training with us. And our training is several modules. And they are assessed at the end of it, but we don't provide a certification to them. That's not our role. That's through TDI.
And let me just add to that, because we're addressing disasters. After a major disaster, we have adjusters coming from out of state. They're emergency adjusters to address the lack of adjusters to try and resolve the claims right away. At any time, they get what they call an emergency license in Texas. But importantly to know is that if there's any difficulty with a claim and you think it's not the right decision, it's always important to contact the insurance company or contact TWIA or contact the Department of Insurance.
Okay, thank you, Manny and Sarah. I'm just going to follow up on another question that was in the chat. Judy Lee originally asked what happens when an adjuster comes out and assesses damage and we receive a report. But then we find out some materials on our house is not available. And Manny answered, the company will pay based on the policy limit for dwelling. However, some companies offer endorsements for increased cost for reconstruction. Please check with your insurance agent. Judy then clarified her question and said, after Hurricane Hannah, several tiles were broken, damaged, and missing from our roof, the roof on our gazebo, which is part of our property. We have searched for these tiles and cannot find a match. We will not replace the tiles with a different color or type of tile. Do we need to have a TWIA adjuster come back?
Let me first answer the first answer I had given. The answer was for a question she had said about if they didn't have enough money for repairing the repairs. The company will pay up to the policy limits based on the amount. If it's a $100,000 home and that's the value, they'll pay to the maximum. But there are endorsements some companies offer that it's based like it's a cost of reconstruction or increased cost of construction. There are endorsements that in the event, say you insured it for $100,000 and at that time that was the amount for 100% replacement cost. But because of increased cost of construction at the time, there are some endorsements that provide that coverage for that increase in cost. Some may be 10, 20, 30%. So that addresses that issue in case there's not enough money in the case that they've superseded the dwelling value. Now, as far as matching, this is a tough one. Let me tell you, I've been in the business many years. It becomes an issue where at times they don't have the material. It's not made anymore. Mm-hmm. Colors are different. The company attempts to try and match it as best as they can to match say it's the side of the house. They'll try and replace the siding with the like kind, but it may not match. It's a situation that we address each year after a major event. It is important that, and many times you just can't. And the insurance company will attempt to try and replace it. Some may decide to take a different avenue to make the customer happy, but to be honest with you, they'll replace it with like kind of quality. It may not be exactly the same, but again, that's a tough one because we battle that particular issue many times after an event. But as far as redoing the entire house, that's not going to happen. But that's a good question. They may want to talk to the insurance agent about what would happen if their company would have that particular situation.
Thanks, Manny. I'm going to jump in here. Judy, I'm Sarah Edstrom with TWIA, and what it sounds like is you have some specific claim questions that I would be more than happy to answer for you and get with our claims management team to answer for you. It's answering specific claim questions in a general way can be tricky and is sometimes not going to give you the information that you need because, and I know this may sound like an old worn out adage, but every single claim is different. And so trying to answer specific claim questions with general information is probably only going to be frustrating to you. So I would offer my contact information and you can contact me directly and we will make sure you get the information you need and the answers you're looking for.
Okay, great. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay, another question came from Greg Garrison. He asks, our building official for the city of Corpus Christi gave a directive that solar panels do not need a WPI. Is that still correct? And Manny answered, solar panels have to be certified with a WPI 8. Now the city may not require it, but TWIA will require it for eligibility. So that made me think about the differences between what your local building code may require and what your insurance company requires. Is it correct that there is a possibility that the two are not the same, the local building code and the insurance requirements?
Kate, I did check with TWIA as we're muted about requirements for the solar panels. And they do require that they being it's installed in the roof, they have to be certified. Now with the city, it's different. I'm not too sure why they would say that, but the mere fact that they don't require it for permitting purposes, maybe, I guess, doesn't disqualify it from eligibility requirements with TWIA, such as air conditioning units. A lot of folks don't know about that, but air conditioning units have to be certified to meet windstorm standards for eligibility purposes with TWIA.
Craig, does that, I tried to unmute you, Craig. Does that answer your question? I just want to make sure that you're good.
Hi, actually, this is Kathleen Chapa. I'm the floodplain manager and coastal protection manager for Corpus Christi. And Craig shot this over to me to be on line with you guys. And thank you so much for all the information today. I was typing, actually, we used to require the WPI 1 at submittal when we received the plans for the solar panels to go on to roofs. However, we were told that they were uninsurable, so that we didn't require one if it wasn't able to be insured. So if that's changed, then I would let the upfront staff know here to go ahead and yes, start making sure we do have those WPI ones. And then the closeout at the end.
There is a second answer in the box that also says, it's from Nicholas Daniels. He says, local building code for Corpus will be the 2018 IBC and the 2020 NEC. I do know.
I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
Nicholas used to be our senior building inspector. Hi, Nick.
Yes.
And love him to death, but they did push back. We did not adopt those codes yet. They're going to go out for another year.
Okay. We will be having another webinar. It's not next week because next week we're going to focus more on flood insurance and the difference between filling out an insurance claim and filling out assistance from national or state organizations. So questions that relate to building codes, that's actually going to be in our third webinar, which we haven't set the date for yet, maybe in June. So any questions regarding building codes will be addressed in a future webinar. Let's see what else we have in the box. So there was a question from Tony Reisinger that says, where can we file a complaint because of inaction by our engineer on our windstorm application? So I just wanted to verify with the panelists on our call today, if there is an issue with an adjuster, an agent, an inspector, or an engineer, are those all the types of questions that they can bring to, I'm not sure if TDI or OPIC or TWIA, can you address issues for all those different types of roles?
Sarah, just add on if I oversee something, but for adjusters, as I mentioned, they can submit a complaint to the Department of Insurance. And also, likewise, if they want to go direct to TWIA, they can do that. I mean, it's an option that they have. But there is a complaints process through the Department of Insurance, and they can call our toll-free number at 1-800-252-3439, or go to our website where they can do it through through the system and submit a complaint regarding adjusters and their practices.
Are we talking about an adjuster or an engineer?
Engineer, okay, adjusters and engineers. I mean, they can call our
engineers. Engineers are, licensed or accredited by the Professional Engineers Organization, and they are the group where you would submit a complaint about an engineer. And in fact, I can put myself on mute and I can grab that information and I can shoot it right over to you, Tony.
And that's
I also
correct.
just broadened the question. His question was about an engineer, but I was just thinking about, the adjusters are part of the process and inspectors are a part of the process. So I just wanted to sort of open the question up broader to see if,
I see.
Yeah.
I see. Yes. And engineers are regulated, for lack of a better term, by the Professional Engineers Group, and then the adjusters are licensed by TDI. It's not really clear for people to be able to get that information, and that's really a good point. Manny, you did put in the information for the adjuster, and I'm going to grab the information for the engineer, and I'll put it in the questions too.
Well, we have what they call an oversight folks that they do oversight on our AQIs. There are certified inspectors, which they're engineers. So there is a process for that through the department. But like Sarah mentioned at the end, they would have to go direct to the Board of Engineers. There are certain things that have to process through TDI for us to contact the engineers. But there's, as I said, two processes. The Department of Insurance, if they can call TDI, will provide any kind of assistance we can up to a certain point. Thereafter, they would have to submit a complaint to the Board of Engineers, as Sarah mentioned.
Then from OPIC's perspective, we are always happy to field calls from consumers and regarding any of these situations, and we're happy to provide any resources or suggestions for consideration as well.
Thank you so much, Kim, for jumping in. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just trying to unmute Tony. Okay, Tony, does it seem like your question was answered?
Well, I've got more questions because our engineer told us that the laws changed, I guess, in the late, or I guess before 2019. And we had a re-roof done, and then we have a porch attached that was, the re-roof was done before the porch, and then the porch was re-roofed. And the porch has a tongue and groove base covered by a roll-on with tar, and they're having trouble getting that approved too. So I guess I'm probably asking time, but we applied last October, went through hurricane season, and now we're coming on another one, and we still haven't gotten approval from the Department of Insurance through our engineer. I'm really worried again.
Tony, let me ask you, I gave you my number to contact me directly.
Yes.
And also our toll-free number to the Corpus Christi office. We've had similar situations such as that where they haven't provided the certification. We can check to see at what state that certification is at through TDI's website. But also importantly is that if there's a particular issue regarding the manner in which the roof was installed, again, that becomes an engineering issue that, as I mentioned, TDI does have somewhat some authority, but at the end, if it's due to the professional engineer, and you would have to go to the that association. But I would want you to first contact us to see how we can help, and call me directly. I left you my cell number, and it's just the nature of what's going on with your particular issue, and I'll be happy to direct you to the proper folks, and I'll be happy to help you.
Thank you, Manny. I was wondering, because our engineer wrote a book about his experiences with the Texas Department of Insurance, and I wonder if they're just giving him a hard time because he says he has lots of other problems with other properties. So I don't know. I'm really concerned.
Well, and that's why, if you can please call us. I believe the gentleman is David Day. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. So with that in mind, just give me a call. And
I will.
I'll be happy to help you. Okay.
I'll call you after this if you're not going out to lunch. If not.
No, I'm here. Just call me after the meeting. I'll be happy.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Thanks, Kate.
We have a question in the chat for Dr. Nielsen Gammon. It says, do you know if climate change will make it easier for invasive species to move into our coastal ecosystems? I guess that's not really related to insurance, but we do have some extra time today, so we'll give Dr. Nielsen Gammon a chance to answer that question.
All right, yeah, fair enough. So it sounds like a simple question, but it's actually complicated by what we consider to be invasive species, because climate change represents a change in typical climate conditions, and ecosystems are adapted to particular sets of climate conditions. So as climate change takes place, locations where preferred locations for ecosystems changes, and so you see some species being eliminated from certain locations where other species are added because the preferred habitats are shifting with the climate. For example, along the Texas coast, we expect to see changes in salinity of bays and estuaries. They're expected to become perhaps more saline over time because of decreased freshwater inflows. And so typical ecosystems you might see in Laguna Madre toward the southern Texas coast might gradually spread farther up the coast, for example. And also decreases in freezing conditions would allow for further expansion of species northward, although recent weather events may have hindered that for the time being. So we have that sort of thing going on, and then also invasive species from, say, other continents or other bodies of water are going to come in as long as the climate is favorable to them. Typically, they're moving into a region where there are no natural competitors or insects that are attacking them or something. So they actually tend to be not very strongly inhibited by climatic conditions. For example, zebra mussels in freshwater ecosystems are spreading all over the place because they don't have much competition. So generally speaking, invasive species aren't going to be affected much by climate change. They're going to be coming in because of they're being spread by man, basically. There may be a few who are range limited presently that will be able to move in, but for the most part, it's going to be more directly affecting the native species than it will the invasive ones.
Okay, just I was looking for Yichi's name in the list of attendees so I could make her alive, but I can't find that right now. Okay, so your question was answered. There was actually a couple of questions that I was going to ask our panelists because they're questions that I've kind of heard here and there, and one of them relates to what happens with the insurance rates after a disaster is declared and people start filing claims. Is there something like the rates get increased based on the number of claims, or how does that work? I think Kim
can take that. Sure. So the answer is it's complex. So from an individual claim, if someone thinks, I've heard the myth that if I file a claim on my house, you know, my rates are going to go up. Your rates could go up even if you do not file a claim on your house. So there's many things that go into your rates, things like your home's age, the condition, the replacement costs, construction materials, you know, where you live, even your credit score. Some of those things go into it. Also, too, normally your claims history does go into it, but for things like the winter storms, so your natural disasters, your company actually in Texas can't consider your individual claim. However, they can consider things like, you know, the disasters like tornadoes, hurricanes, things like that that happen in your area as well as across the state. So usually the rates don't go up sharply immediately after a catastrophe. But rates can be filed by companies at any time, with the exception TWIA is only able to make a rate filing once a year. So it depends is the short answer. But the myth, if I don't file a claim on my house, that does not mean your rates won't go up.
Thank you, Kim.
Sure.
Manny, did you want to add something?
No, I totally agree with Kim. As she mentioned about weather-related losses, there's a Consumer Bill of Rights, and you can get that particular form at OPIC's website. And it specifically states that they cannot non-renew or increase rates based on your individual loss. If it's weather-related, you know, would it be hailstorms, hurricanes, tornadoes? It's prohibited. But one thing of importance too to know that when you start to shop for a new, and if you decide to shop, it's important to understand that companies can consider all the loss factors. As far as a policy that you currently have, they cannot non-renew or increase rates based on a weather-related loss, as Kim has mentioned. But if you start to shop around, just be careful, because they may consider hurricanes, tornado losses, and in the course of reviewing for eligibility with that company. So before you, which we find it important to shop, but make sure that they know all the factors as far as loss history. That way they won't cancel your policy. They've got 60 days to review your policy in the course of shopping or applying for insurance with a company.
Okay, thank you both, Kim and Manny.
Welcome.
One other question was that most people get flood insurance through the NFIP, which is government based, so it's like public insurance. But from what I've seen, there is, you would go to a private company to get wind insurance. Is that correct? Is there any way to get public insurance, public wind insurance?
Sarah?
Maybe I didn't ask that very clearly.
There is no NFIP for wind insurance.
Right. No,
Okay.
I just meant like, the example I was giving for flood insurance is that there is a public option for flood insurance, but is there a public option for windstorm insurance?
It's really hard to compare those. What I can tell you is what TWIA is. TWIA is it's an organization that's there to provide the insurance in those 14 counties if you're denied by somebody else. Yeah, I really don't know how to answer that question. The short answer is no.
I like it.
Please, Manny, sorry about that. Thank you.
It's okay. I know it's kind of a complicated question.
I know you're talking about wind and hail, as we mentioned, that's TWIA. But we do have companies that are offering full coverage and wind and hail. We have through the depopulation process, where companies are coming in and providing wind and hail coverage. Okay, so there is that private company availability. There's also what they have surplus lines that are writing wind and hail, but this is surplus lines and they're licensed in Texas, but they have to be licensed in another state. And that's the thing of importance, that there is availability. So it's important to recognize if it's part of the population program or part of the volunteer program in which companies are wanting to write in the coastal area with windstorm, hurricane, and hail. So I think I'm answering your question. There is private out there. People may approach you, or companies may approach you. So it's important that they contact TDI to verify which company it is, because the one thing of caution is surplus lines. As I mentioned, we don't regulate their forms, nor do we regulate their rates. So many times it appears to be good, but you never know the outcome after a storm. I've had companies non-renew policies because they no longer want to write after the storm, but that's because they're surplus lines, and they can pretty much do that. So that's there is some availability, but the consumer has to be careful and always can contact the Department of Insurance or also OPEC.
Thank you, Manny.
Welcome.
We had another question in the chat, was just, will we be able to get copies of all materials covered today? I would love to have copies of the slides, since so much information was given today. I appreciate everyone that has contributed to this webinar. And Ashley replied, we will be sharing a recording of the webinar today, and we'll check in with the presenters to see if they would be all right sharing their individual PowerPoints. Ashley, was there going to be any other kind of materials that we were going to share with the attendees other than the video?
There is certainly a possibility of working with each of the presenters to see if you guys have resources that you would like to share directly. I was going to share relevant websites that people could go to and contact information, but I'll get with the presenters after to see if there's anything else they would like to share with the recording that we'll be sending out.
So far, all of the questions in the Q&A box have been answered. I don't see any more coming in. If anybody wants to throw in a last minute question, we can do that. We have a little more time.
I'd like to thank you because it's been very informative. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. One more question. Are claims done on each event or per season? I think maybe that relates to last year when some areas were hit by multiple hurricanes. I know East Texas and Louisiana was hit quite a few times last year.
I can try to address that, assuming I understand the question. It's going to depend. I mean, they're going to investigate each claim that comes in. They're going to look to see what the damages are and what the situation was. And it really will be what your policy contract language says. And so that goes back to what I was talking about with, named storm deductibles and whether or not it's something that's going to apply, once a season, or more typically it'll be for every claim. I believe what Judy may be asking is the scenarios to where you have something and it's very difficult to figure out, was it one claims loss or was it two, because they're weather events that happened, very close together. And then that's going to be really, it depends. And it's going to be a looking at the damages, looking at their contract language, and then having a discussion with their claims representative.
Thank you so much. I was just curious because in some of the other people around me were telling me that they don't have TWIA. They have another insurance company that apparently insured their peers. And of course, when we bought the property in December 2018, we knew that our peer would not be covered under our homeowners policy or under TWIA, since the peer is situated in the water, and that basically is owned by the state of Texas. So I was just kind of curious because some of them had, though we had the hurricane hit, and then we had some major wind that came in from storms, and some of the other people were saying that they were having to apply separately for claims. And another resident was saying, well, their insurance was just taking it per season. So I guess it really does depend on who the carrier is for your insurance.
And Judy, can I add into that?
Absolutely.
As far as your peer, under the policy, it specifically states they don't cover if it's partially or over water. So that's correct. There is you may want to check with your agent to see, I've seen companies write and provide coverage for peers on a separate dwelling fire policy, but it has to be specifically insured. So I know that's possible, but you would have to check with your insurance agent.
I did. Our insurance is USAA, and they will not insure it.
Okay. Yeah, it's going to vary from company to company.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a good reminder, Judy. What we were talking about is knowing what your needs are, because there's a lot of Texans that don't have a peer, and that's not guidance that someone would normally think about or know to ask. So it's good that you ask that question, and it's a good reminder for things that you may have that are different than someone else to ask those questions of your current insurance and when you're shopping potentially for new insurance.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone who has asked a question, because sometimes as an attendee, when I've been in webinars, sometimes as an attendee, I don't think of something right away, but then somebody else asks the question and I'm like, oh my God, why didn't I think of that question? That's perfect. So I'm glad for everybody who has asked a question in case other people actually needed the same kind of answers. We're right at 1:50 and the webinar ends at 2:00. So Ashley, do you want to give like a wrap up?
I believe Walter's going to give the wrap up.
Okay. Walter, do you want all the panelists to turn off our videos again so that your final slide will pop up?
No, it's fine. I wanted to thank everybody for coming. If you needed one of the participants or one of the presenters' contact information, or someone in Texas Sea Grant's contact information, I am showing you the contact information right now. Please feel free to reach out to us with anything or what you might like to see in the future. We really appreciate you guys coming in today and joining us for our webinar.
Can I jump in right there for a second?
Finally.
So
Sure.
You'll see for TWIA, it's David Lawson. And I'm not David Lawson. I'm Sarah Edstrom. And I am a very, very, very last minute fill-in. So that might explain a little bit of some juggling of those questions. But I am available to answer anybody's questions who's attended this, and I have absolutely no problem sharing my contact information. I can't update his slide like right now, but it's sedstrom@twia.org, and I'm sure that the Sea Grant folk will update their information because David Lawson will be out of the office for a little while, and it'd be best to contact me. Sorry for the interruption.
Oh, no problem. No problem. I'll make sure that we send that out in our email. Thank you again, everybody. And I hope to see you guys in part 2 of this webinar series on April 21st at noon. If you haven't RSVP'd, please RSVP or send us an email. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.